It is one of my favorite times of the year, another M. Night Shyamalan movie release. Now, first off, I just want to say I'm very biased because M. Night Shyamalan is one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite, as of right now, because he's just so consistent on like what he makes. I mean, yes, he has hit or miss films. I'm not gonna lie. There are some I don't enjoy, but generally I know what to expect from an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and I typically always enjoy them. Anyway, just wanted to point out my bias right off the bat because this movie, Trap, which we're gonna talk about today, has been getting very mixed reviews. I feel like every time an M. Night Shyamalan movie comes out, by the way, I think I say Shyamalan wrong, but every time an M. Night movie comes out, it's very polarizing. We know this. I think some people just really love to hate on M. Night Shyamalan. And I saw bad reviews coming in for Trap, and I was trying to not let that affect me and my viewing experience because I had to wait a couple days before I was able to see it. So I saw them coming in and I was getting a little nervous, but I was like, no, I'm gonna form my own opinion. I'm not gonna let that influence my viewing experience of the movie, and I tried my best. Trap follows a father and teen daughter that attend a pop concert where they realize they're at the center of a dark and sinister event. Now, of course, if we see the trailers, we know that the trap is actually the concert, and what is seemingly the twist in the movie, that the dad is the killer, is also in the trailer. So this was revealed in the trailer, so I think some people had some questions, like, what is he doing? Is there another twist? Like, what does he have up his sleeve? That was my interpretation, that, well, that's not going to be a twist, if he even decides to do a twist at all, because sometimes I think M. Night wants to do something else. Like with Knock at the Cabin, I feel like there wasn't like a huge twist in that. But I thought that was because it was based on a book. So he was just trying to, he didn't really stay accurate to the book ending, but he was just trying something different, right? So let's start actually with my criticisms of this movie. I usually start with the positives. We're gonna mix it up a little bit. Let's start with the criticisms. Also, I will be doing spoilers, which will begin at this time. So you can, stop watching the video at that point if you have not seen the movie yet. So the pop star in this movie, Lady Raven, is played by Salika Night Shyamalan, which is, of course, M. Night's own daughter. While I understand he wants his daughters to shine and be very successful, obviously there's a little bit of nepotism because his other daughter, Ishana, directed The Watchers earlier this year. I just felt like in Trap, there was a lot of focus on the actual concert and like showing every single song. Not in its entirety by any means, although there are moments. There's like a scene where it's like an entire song. So we're focused a lot on the concert, and I feel like that's always the switch in each scene. Like we'll jump from the dad going about his way throughout the concert hall, whatever, like in the hallways, and then we'll jump to the concert, and then we'll jump back. It's in every other scene is like a concert scene for the first like half of the movie. I just personally felt like it was a little bit too much. The performance was great. I thought she is obviously an amazing singer, and it was very believable that she could be this famous pop star and, have that kind of stage presence. So I liked it, but I just thought it was a little bit too much of the actual concert itself. Also, my biggest criticism I think of this movie is that it is pretty predictable. Every single plot line or like plot device was very obvious to me and like what was to happen next. So I just didn't love that I knew every single thing that was going to transpire. Obviously, certain parts of the big story, the major story, I don't know what's going on. I'm not a psychic, right? But there are certain things leading up to certain events. I'll get into specifics and spoilers, but that are just very predictable and things that have been kind of done before, so it's a little bit obvious to me. So I wish there was some, more creativity when it came to certain aspects of this movie. And given that, I don't feel like this movie has like the same impact that an M. Night Shyamalan movie typically has for me, like with a twist reveal or even the story reveal. It doesn't even have to be a huge major twist or plot point. It's just like how the story unfolds. I feel like it usually has more of an impact for me, but because I saw a lot of things coming, it just was kind of the same note throughout the entire movie, the same level of tension, nothing really ramping up because I knew what was probably going to happen. Also, character motivations and decisions did not always work for me. Like, they were a little bit confusing at times. Again, more specifics and spoilers. But they were just a little strange, especially in the second half of the movie. I think the second half of the movie is the weaker part and where it kind of lost me a little bit. But some of the character decisions, you know, I've seen a lot of criticism about that, and I have to agree, especially towards the end of this movie. It was a little questionable. I think the whole story in general is pretty unbelievable, which isn't really a problem. I mean, I love Old, and that's about a magic rock. Okay, so like, it doesn't have to be very accurate or, you know, super believable, because a lot of M. Night movies are not. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad storytelling or anything, but I want to believe it in like the world, you know? And I just felt like some of the decisions in this weren't believable in this world that he had created, if that makes sense. Now, some of the positives of this movie, generally I had a fun time watching this movie. I didn't really expect that I wouldn't, because I always love M. Night Shyamalan's storytelling and the way he just makes movies. It just always seems to work for me, and I have a good time regardless of certain things that don't work for me in the movie. I've seen a lot of people talking about the strange dialogue in this movie. I've even seen people go so far as to say on TikTok that they're questioning if this is written by AI, but I doubt it. To me, the weird dialogue was intentional. Like, it was obvious that it was intentional. Like, this guy, Cooper, the dad, is a weird guy. Like, he's a serial killer, and he is also a father of a young girl. So yeah, there's gonna be some like weird, disjointed dialogue. And even the daughter throughout the movie is like, Dad, you're acting weird. So it was intentional. It was supposed to be like he's under duress because he realizes with all the cops and the FBI and the SWAT that things are not normal here at the concert. This isn't just any concert. So then he's like trying to create diversions and distractions and things, and that all was really fun, and it made sense to me with the dialogue and everything taking place. So that wasn't really a criticism that I had. I liked it. I thought he was a fun character to follow, and I liked that it was different, that we're following the killer instead of like a protagonist or like a final girl or anything like that, and seeing kind of like how his mind is working. But Josh Hartnett as the killer and the dad was fantastic. I really loved his performance and thought he was very believable with his goofy little smile and his like fake smile. It was so funny. Like, I genuinely laughed at some parts because he was just so like awkward and his voice would get really high. I thought it was great. I thought that part of the movie with his performance was amazing. We also have a little M. Night cameo in this, of course, because he's always going to be in the movie a little bit, and every time I'm like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme. I do recommend it in theaters, but I don't think it's necessary unless you're like a really big fan of M. Night Shyamalan. I think the concert sequences are best in theaters because of surround sound, obviously. But otherwise, I feel like it's not necessary, but I'm always going to support M. Night Shyamalan. Like, I will always make it to the theater to see an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Like last year when Knock at the Cabin came out, I was 2 months postpartum, still made it. I still went to see that movie in theaters. So I will always show up for M. Night, and I suggest you do too, because I think he's one of the remaining directors that can't be bought out. He's not a sellout, and he funds his own movies, and he just loves the passion. Like, he has the passion for filmmaking, and that always comes across in his movies. So I'd say go, you know, support him in theaters, but I don't think the movie itself is necessarily needing a theater experience. Okay, spoilers, finally. Let's talk about spoilers. So where the movie begins to lose me, okay, is, I don't know if this is at like the midpoint, but Lady Raven suggests that they all go back to his house. Okay, so he ends up admitting to Lady Raven in private, as if that would ever happen. I don't believe that a pop star as famous as she's supposedly, you know, I'm comparing her to like a Taylor Swift or Ariana Grande maybe. I don't think anyone would ever leave her alone with a strange man. That just wouldn't happen regardless. No matter what, there would be at least one security guard with her at all times at this concert. Even if she said, can I talk to him in private? I don't think they would actually let her do that. But especially in this setting of this movie where they are actively looking for a serial killer that they have not found yet, because literally in the scene right before this private meeting with him, she goes to the cameras and the FBI agents, and she's like, have we found him yet? Because she's in on the whole thing, right? And they're like, no, we're still looking. We're stopping every single guy. There's 3,000 men here, and it's got to be one of them, right? And then he like immediately pulls her aside. He's like, hey, can we talk? And it's like, No one would let her be alone with any man, no matter what. I know his daughter was chosen for Dreamgirl and like got to dance on stage with Lady Raven. Like, I get that they set that up, but at the same time, they have known this man for like 20 minutes. So they still would not let her be alone. So that was one of the things that was just not believable in this world. It would never have happened in reality regardless if there was a serial killer or not, let alone the fact there was a serial killer involved in this whole story. So that wouldn't have happened. I wish they had a better way to like execute that, or like him slip her a note or something where it was like private, but not. Like, she still had somebody there. And so she immediately asked to go to his house. Again, would never happen in a million years. Nobody on her security team would let that happen, let alone she goes alone with just the limo driver. The limo driver wouldn't even let that happen. So she doesn't even have security with her when she goes to this man's house. Which is where the movie completely loses me at that point, because then it becomes like not believable at all. I think they could have kept it really simple and kept the whole thing at the concert and had him looking for an escape. I think that would have been way better and simpler than having them all go back to their house, and then we got the wife coming in as a storyline. You know, they have a son. It's like this whole extra thing. It didn't need to be. I wanted the whole thing to take place at the concert and just him messing with people the whole time and trying to get away. And then whether he does or doesn't, you know, whatever. And then she performs a whole other song in their living room trying to buy time. And that's what I was talking about, where she literally plays a whole song and we're watching her play a whole song. And, you know, Josh Hartnett's character Cooper is like sweating on the couch, like, all right, you need to go, like, please leave. And then she steals his phone, and then she goes in the bathroom, and then she goes on live, probably like Instagram Live or something, and she's like begging her followers for help, and it just becomes so much bigger than it needed to be. Like, why? I just don't feel like that would actually happen. And then it's just so happens that someone lives right by one of his houses where he has the person, Spencer, locked up in a basement, and they go and rescue him because they live across the street from that house. So that all just seemed a little bit far-fetched, and I just don't believe a famous pop star like her would sacrifice her whole life for the sake of a stranger. I know that sounds dark, but like, could you see Taylor Swift just like sacrificing herself to go to help some stranger who seems to be locked in a basement? And the wife comes into play, and it's revealed that she's actually the one that turned in her husband to the FBI, because the whole time I'm wondering, like, how do they know the killer is at this concert? How did they figure that out without figuring out who he was? Because they're profiling the killer, and there's the whole side story of the profiler from the FBI, and that almost felt like Halloween with like Dr. Loomis and Michael Myers. It kind of felt like that dynamic, and honestly that would have been really cool if they focused a little bit more on that. But I was still questioning, like, how do they know that he's there without knowing who he is? Because they're pulling aside all these men, but the wife is actually the one that like submitted the ticket, or like planted the ticket at one of his murder houses because she figured it out. I guess she followed him. It just seems like it gets a little bit convoluted on how she found out, and we just have to assume a lot of things along the way. And also Cooper just being an escape artist and like getting away every single time, even in the very, very end. He's always surrounded by a ton of people and never gets caught doing anything that he's doing. Like, he's standing in a room of FBI agents or the SWAT people, the SWAT team, and he's just standing there in the back, and I'm like, I know people probably assume he just works there, but he's just standing there like a dude listening to this meeting. He's not even trying to hide. Like, it was just very strange how good he was at this and getting away with every single thing, when I just don't believe that necessarily. And then this is where all the decisions really don't make any sense at all. It just gets very strange. So he tries to take the singer to this house, but then she like starts pretending to be his mom in the car because he has mommy issues, and he's like hallucinating his mom throughout the movie. That whole side thing I don't think we needed that, to be honest. I feel like that was just thrown in. We saw her like 3 times, maybe just a glimpse. And it's just like, why? I don't know. Anyway, she starts like talking to him like she's his mom, and it was just very weird. And it didn't really go anywhere. Like, it didn't work. It didn't do anything for the story. So I just felt like we could have done without. Anyway, and then he comes back to the house. She gets rescued, whatever. She like gets free. And then he goes back to the house. The children are staying at an aunt's house, and the wife is there. So he comes back to kill his wife, right? Of course. And she's like, but first, before you kill me, have some pie. Have some pie. And it's obvious that it's poison, right? Like, of course she's gonna feed him poison pie. Like, he's about to kill her. And she's like, have some pie. It's like, obviously she did something to the pie. And then he's like, okay. And then he eats the pie. And then he gets tased like 3 times from the cops. Again, he would have been shot. He would have been shot, but this is a PG-13 movie, and of course he can't die because he has to escape like 2 more times, right, in the movie. The tasing seemed to have no effect really on him, but again, if they know for a fact he was a serial killer and he has like a knife in his hand, they would have sniped him. Anyway, those are some examples of like how it's obvious along the way, like obviously there's poison in the cake, right? And there are just times where you know he's going to get away, like it's just so obvious. The last scene where she's this Lady Raven's in the limo by herself. Again, she would never be left alone ever. She's by herself in the limo, and then the FBI agent, checks in with the limo driver. They switch, and I'm like, that's him. That's Cooper the killer, right? And obviously it was. So there wasn't really any real like M. Night Shyamalan typical twist that we would see, you know, obviously the mom being the wife is the one who turned him in is, I guess, a reveal, but it didn't have like the same impact as typical M. Night twists that we have seen in the past. So I just felt like it got a little bit too complicated as soon as she was like, let's go back to your house. That's where it kind of took a fall for me. Otherwise, I did have fun in the theater watching this, and I did enjoy it overall despite my like kind of ranting there at the end about the second half of this movie. I just felt like it could have been stronger if they just kept it at the concert, and I don't know why they necessarily didn't. Like, they obviously had the budget to keep it there, so I just feel like there could have been more like backstage. They were only backstage for a short period of time. They could have like done a cat and mouse in the back or under the stage. You know, there was that time where he wanted to go under the stage. I feel like that could have been really cool. Just something like that. So I feel like it just needed to be simpler. Unfortunately, not my favorite M. Night movie ever made. Do I give it a 2.5 out of 5? That seems really harsh. 3 out of 5 for enjoyment. It was fun. 2.5 for technicalities. So that's what I would give it. Let me know your thoughts on Trap if you have seen it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.